I feel like gaming isn't really the same that it used to be. I feel like it's kind of lost its magic, I guess, right? And so it made me start wondering why? What about it has changed to make it feel so different? And there are a few things that I could really figure out that I know that I think makes it a lot less magical now than it used to be. And I feel like now gaming is a lot more corporatized and everything is made for profits. Everything is trying to squeeze you for everything you've got. And it's not it's not as much just making games that are good anymore. It's about seeing how much money you can squeeze out of every aspect of a game. And so obviously, the first one that I'm going to start with is microtransactions, which is just anything you can buy in a game, right? Honestly, it doesn't really even matter if it's pay to win. Of course, if it is pay to win, it's much, much worse because obviously it ruins the integrity of the game because a game is supposed to be, or at least it should be, a match of skill between two different people. And if you have other things in there, other factors that you can just have an advantage in winning, if you just have to pay, if you just feel like paying, then the entire integrity of being one player's skill versus another player's skill goes out the window, right? And of course, there have always been this kind of thing in gaming, but it only really ramped up lately. Before they had anything, the only kind of games that I can remember having that within the past like 10 years ago would be like Call of Duty, maybe, and some other games, of course. But generally, I feel like the pay to win mechanic has really become a more of a problem than it was then. I don't really think it's the biggest problem, but I definitely think it's a big problem, right? And it's become worse over time, I think. But I think generally players, it's so egregious that most of the times that people try it, they get lambasted on the internet. Think Battlefront 2, where they had that whole loot box era in the beginning and they had to change it all. Or maybe in the beginning of Overwatch 2, when they tried to make heroes be in the battle pass and eventually they had enough backlash that they changed their minds, right? But even still, it makes it so that like game companies are incentivized to if they allow you to get something for free, they make it as hard as possible to make you have to pay, right? And if they didn't have that mechanic where you could buy that whole thing in the game, they wouldn't really have a reason to make it so hard. So not only can you ruin a game by having these stuff available to buy so that you can win, but also even if you don't pay for it, it'll still ruin it because of how they make it. And of course, I'm not even talking about games like the hellhole that's sports games, 2K, Madden, all of those kind of things with Ultimate Team and My Team and whatever else they have that's pretty much just like a hidden casino. Anything like that, that pay to win stuff is, I mean, it's been bad forever, I guess. That shit's just irredeemable. But still, my point is, it's terrible and it's really not good for gaming. And then the next one, which I think is way worse than pay to win mechanics or microtransactions or whatever, which is the live service model. And I think that really didn't get popularized until Fortnite, maybe. Before that, all I can remember is companies doing something like a DLC pack. So if they make a Call of Duty game or a Battlefield game, there will be like four individual DLCs that you can buy for more content, more guns, or whatever, which I didn't really like at the time either because it kind of separates the player base, but even still, it's not that bad, right? Not nearly compared to this. And the tricky thing about the live service model is that on the surface, it kind of seems good in the beginning. You're like, what? Wow, I can just pay a few dollars and get a free battle pass, and the content never stops. Because back then, that was a big thing that we were worried about. Is eventually, once the DLCs stop or whatever, they stop adding content to it because they're not really making any money on it. They need to move the game designers to start making the next game. And, I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, it was something that we didn't like back then. When they introduced live service games, they never really had to die because they could just keep making battle passes and content and whatever and make money that way. And it's probably more of a win-win for them too, because they can keep making stuff on the same game and still make money without having to make a whole new game just to make more money. The big negatives to me, I think, outweigh the positives, even if it does some good stuff that I like about gaming. It doesn't have to be all negative, right? But some bad things that I really didn't like is that a lot of the times it felt corporatized and sanitized because these people these games feel way more like they're just trying to make money on every part of the game than just making a good and complete game, right? Like even lately, there are some, not a lot anymore, but a few gems that remind me of the magic of old gaming. Maybe like Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate. Like just complete games right when they launch. I mean, of course, a few bugs here and there, but generally I'm saying, they're not half baked. They're finished games at launch. You don't need to pay for anything else. You just get the full game. And of course, I know single player games are a bit different, but even now, single player games are not like that. So even still, that makes my point. But when it comes to the live service type games like Fortnite and stuff, I find that the content is really only about making you pay money on stuff. Like they'll make stuff really annoying to get just to make money, right? Or just to make you get annoyed and pay for something instead of actually just making a good thing. And then on top of that, when you pay all this money to buy skins and items and everything in these games, what happens if the game shuts down? Because eventually, live service games will shut down at some point and you'll lose everything. All the stuff you paid for is gone. And that's just, I think, a huge problem because, like, in a single player game or anything like that, those will never really go away. But in multiplayer games, eventually the servers shut down. Think NBA 2K, right? After like 2 years, you log back in and everything is gutted. The servers are shut down because they want to focus on their new games. And that's not even that long, 2 years. Imagine paying $100 to make your 99 overall demigod player, and then you go back and it's just gone. All that money for nothing, pretty much. And again, this kind of model incentivizes the companies to focus on only making things that will make them money. So they'll only focus on making skins and battle passes and stuff, and it'll leave the actual content, the gameplay, the reason why people want to play the game, kind of out to dry. Where they won't really focus on it too much because why would they? They're not really making any money on it. And I think my third and final point, it can be very drastic when you compare them to old games, which is that nowadays companies feel like they can just release a half-baked, unfinished game and expect people to just wait for them to finish it. They always do that. They release the game way too early when it's terrible. People buy it and pre-order it. It gets terrible reviews. People hate it. They leave it. And then the companies try to fix it up over the next year or two. And then right when it becomes in the state where maybe people will come back and want to play it again, they're finished with the game and they have to move on to the next one. Or sometimes, if it's a live service game or something like that, it'll become so bad that people just shut the game down because they're not making any money on it. And then anybody that spent money on the game or on the items in the game or the battle pass are just shit out of luck again. And that's the thing that, like, back then, it was very rare for a game to come out just completely unfinished. They had standards back then, and they knew that people wouldn't accept that. So they had to make sure the game was really good at launch. But now, I feel like it's almost a lucky thing, like a surprising thing when a game comes out and it's just like really good out of the gate without having anything they need to add or any more content they promised but they haven't put in there yet. And when I think about all three of these things combined in the gaming industry as a whole, it definitely shows me why I feel like the magic is kind of gone. And a lot of it is just the companies trying to do everything they can to squeeze every last dollar out of the players and to do the very bare minimum to get any money. I mean, like, look at sports games. They don't ever even change their fucking code. They'll have the same buggy error from 4 years in a row, and they'll never even think about changing it. Even if it takes 5 minutes, they don't care. They just take the same game and replace it over and over and over again and add a few things here and there. And I know sports games are bottom of the barrel, but it shows my point that gamers will accept that kind of stuff. And that's what I'm talking about. That's why I think it's so bad. But anyways, that's just my opinion. See ya.